I'm Al Rosen, and you're watching iBaseball Extended.
In 1985, I had read and heard that Al wrote that the Houston Astros and Mr. McMullen was going to clean house with everybody. He was really upset. And I had the pleasure of meeting Al when I first got into baseball in '76. And would talk to him whenever I could, and always respected him.
Was he an assistant with the Yankees at that time?
He was
GM?
He was the GM.
The GM.
At that time, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
And he was always very helpful, and we got along very well, and was helpful in the way of a lot of good advice, etc. So in '85, when I heard that, I called McMullen and asked for permission, because you can't, tamper with other people's employees. So he reluctantly said, "Oh, okay." So I called Al, and it happened that the Houston club was in San Francisco. We had some discussions, and the next couple of days I flew down to Houston and met with Al for a long time, and said, I've been president. You're going to become president. I'll become chairman. And I said, you know a lot more about it than I do, and we had a great relationship. Yeah. And had spent some time, and we talked about a variety of things, and liked what he said. And I said, the only ground rule I have is, if you want to do something and you're going to have the authority, I don't want to read about it in the paper. So you and I have to at least chat about it.
Right.
He was just great about it.
Yeah.
And then we talked about a manager. What do we do about a manager? And he had never met Roger Craig. And I had when Roger was with the Padres, because I'd meet him in spring training and see him. But Al said, I've heard a lot of great things about him. And at that time, Roger was a pitching coach, I think, for Detroit.
That's right. He was Sparky's pitching coach in Detroit. And they won a World Series back in 1984. So
we called to track Roger down. Turned out that he was home, and said, yeah, he could come. And so he came under the guise of scouting for the Tigers. So we flew to Houston, came that night during the game, spent all morning with him. Al liked him, and I had to go back to San Francisco. So I said to Al, your call, if you like him. So that afternoon he called me and he said, Roger wants a 3-year contract. And I said, well, how do you feel about that? And he said, fine. So I said, do it. So that was the beginning of Roger.
So,
as you know, Roger was quite an individual.
Right.
Basically pretty easy, but could be tough at times.
Right.
He, some pitchers don't want to come out of a game, and some get stubborn. But he,
right. So
I can remember some instances where somebody didn't want to come out, but he finally did.
Oh yeah. And so, as you see this team get put together in front of you, what are you thinking now?
It's getting better and better. And '87 was an exciting year.
Go past '87 now.
I'm not going past. I'm going into '87.
Okay.
The playoff year.
You're right. And
devastating loss to the Cardinals.
1 game away from getting a World Series.
Yep.
Very, very tough thing to swallow.
It was.
For me. I don't know about you, but I
think it was harder for me. No, that was awful.
It was bad. But anyways, those things happen. But
we at least we were in the playoffs, and we made it.
Right, and then things are looking better, and Al's really trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together to get.
He's making some good trades. He's out scouting. Went to Nevada.
But then in '88, do you remember what happened?
We didn't get into the playoffs. Things didn't quite work out. There was a little injury here and there.
Yeah, when your guys went down. I don't get a lot of credit, but I played a big role in there. So no, I had the elbow surgery.
Right.
And then if you remember, I think Will hyperextended his elbow, and he threw him into a tailspin there for a while. But now
'89.
Now it's
Pretty
1989, exciting. And what do you What are you thinking? You're still positive?
Always try to be positive regardless.
But you have to know that there's a pretty good nucleus of some players down there now, right? You can tell by the atmosphere in the clubhouse when you come in.
Yeah, well, I think, one of the things I've always felt, one of the biggest responsibilities of a manager is to motivate. There's 24, 28 teams, and probably 4 or 5 teams don't have the talent to win.
Right.
But most teams do. And with free agency and the contracts, etc.
Avoid an injury here and there, and a couple of calls your way, and you're in it.
And it's up to the manager to really motivate all the players and to really let them know. And Roger did a heck of a job of doing that.
Right.
And '89 was a very exciting year, except for the World Series.
It looks like now you're gonna. They rejected that offer. You wanted to stay here. Something developed.
I did.
Where you could stay.
We went around twice around the country in person. Al Rosen, Corey Bush, and Jim Hunt from time to time, our attorney or somebody from his office, and we face to face every American League and every National League owner. I had called all of them to get a reaction, what they thought, and I said, people say some things on the phone that they don't always mean, so let's just go around the country, which we did. And the majority understood, if there was nobody in San Francisco, that they could understand why we'd want to go to Florida or want to sell a club in Florida. Mm-hmm. However, when it really came down to a vote, it didn't turn out that way at all. People had a sudden change of heart, mind, for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. So we finally negotiated something with McGowan, and he bought the ball club.
And McGowan came on because of, was there some people working behind the scenes as far as...
He'd always had an interest, and he made an offer that I said it was completely unacceptable. And, if that's going to be, I said, we'll keep the ball club. Because I said, you're stalling, and we're not going to be able to go to Florida. But he finally came up with...
He came up with the loot, but you were very generous in the end, weren't you? You took back
for a brief time, a little bit, very low, because we had no interest. Because people to this day, on occasion, will say, "Well, you still own part of the ball club, don't you?" And I said, "Not since 1993." We had
but you did
zero
have interest in it for a short period of time.
Yeah,
you
very
took back
short.
a loan, and they paid you.
Yep.
And then that was the end of the
Right.
Lurie regime.
Correct.
A